Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Questions for Candidates for the Sport Candidates. The way the session will work is they will each be given a 1-minute opening statement. We'll then move into 4 or 5 questions where they'll each get a minute to respond to the question before a 30-second closing statement. There are some QR codes scattered around the room if you do wish to submit audience questions, which we will try and get to if we have time. And candidates, please speak into the mic so that CTV can get you, and try not to respond to each other during the panel. Thank you. I'm Rohan. I'm a second-year politics student. I'm the elected student member of the Democratic Procedures team. This is Amy, the Deputy Returning Officer. If I do get any of your names wrong, please correct me. And with that, we'll get started with introductions. You'll all have 1 minute, and we'll start with Abby. You can just speak.
Hello, hi, my name is Abigail Faulkner. Most people just call me Abby. I'm in my 3rd year studying educational psychology. And a little bit about me. I've been playing sports since I was really, really little. I lived abroad in Singapore. And growing up, I wasn't the most academically gifted kid. So my parents chucked me into sports, and I've been playing it ever since. A little bit about what I want to do for next year. So my main kind of 5 things is improving accessibility for all athletes of all abilities. My second is improving and boosting mental health and physical health through sports. My third is increasing media coverage and sporting improvement via media. So I think we can all agree, people that play sports here, getting that coverage back home is a really, really big thing for our parents. And my final thing is boosting and creating some more sporting scholarships for overseas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Angus.
Hi guys, I'm Angus. I'm a 5th year electronic engineer. I've been representing Bath Sport, American football for about 5 years now. And this year, I'm on the Sports Executive Committee. So essentially the committee who are responsible for working with the sport officer, acting as a connection between them and all the committees to improve sports at Bath. A few things about what we'll do here is, so it's broken into 2 areas, student engagement and club development. The student engagement part is about including more students in sport, both as spectators, players, coaches, support staff, because right now there isn't very much opportunity to do that. On the development side, we have a lot of clubs have problems with finances, with broken kit, with kit storage, and these are all areas I'm aiming to focus on, including some of the legislation stuff, such as gender eligibility, which is quite a hot topic at the moment. End of the day, everything I'm doing here is to improve the sporting situation at Bath, make it better for students, more enjoyable, more value, and I think I've got enough experience to do that.
Thank you. Next we'll have Ishwar.
My name is Ishwar, and I'm doing my master's in sport management. One of the reasons why I want to become a sport officer is to put my experience into the fore, because me being a professional cricketer playing with international cricketers like Ashwin has given me a lot of opportunity and a lot of experience to understand what sport is all about behind the scenes. And it's not only about how it happens behind the scenes for professional sport, but how people get into sport as such, because sport is played by almost every single person in this, and people who don't play sport have some form of recreation, but sport is a way where you can keep yourself healthy. So I would want to make sure that sport is being played by everybody at Bath. And the other thing is, in terms of equipment, I really want to make sure that a lot of people are getting the right equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we'll have Jacob.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a 4th year IME student. I've represented GB at fencing for 5 years. In my 1st year at Bath, I won silver at the European Championships. In my 2nd year at Bath, I started volleyball, and now I've risen to be on the committee. I understand sport and the needs of athletes from both a elite level and a recreational level, and what we need to do to improve sport and the whole culture at Bath. I want to increase the accessibility for everyone from the lowest levels to the highest levels. I want to support athletes mentally and financially, and I want to raise the inclusivity.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh. A lot of people know me as Cookie. I've been at uni 4 years now, so I do sports coaching and management. I had a placement year last year, so I got to see New Zealand and like how sport's done on the other side of the world. I'm kind of using my experiences from like my years in sport and want to put that into this role. As chair of football, I've heard from the ground the issues that people feel on a day-to-day, such as like the storage kit, the facilities, like books fees. All these things is stuff I want to tackle as part of my manifesto. Like with the storage stuff, I want to get us better partnership. Can we get better access on campus? I want facilities, like can we get some storage? All things like this that will improve the student experience. I want more showcase events. So I want to give people the best opportunity to experience sport at Bath, because Bath is such a good place for sport. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Nick.
Right, good afternoon. My name is Nick Pilgrim. I've been at the university for 4 years now. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. We'll come back to you after Zuba if you want. Zuba, you have.
Hello everyone, I'm Zubair, your current postgraduate officer, and you might also know me as someone who don't stop talking about sports, whether that be cricket, badminton, football, tennis, or whatever it might be. I know sports, I follow sports a lot, and that is why I want to be your sports officer for the upcoming year to improve sports community here at Bath. Sports is not just about competing, it's about more of having fun and that particular sense of community here, and I want to make sure that I push that up with more increasing in representation, transparency of facilities and budgets, making sure that students have that ability to come to us and then fulfill their request. I want to make sure that I advocate for that voice for students all around, as I've been doing in my role currently. So it's about building a stronger community here at Bath. So vote Zubair for sports.
Thank you. Nick, if you'd like another rerun at your opening statement.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I believe my main points are building a thriving sporting atmosphere, making sport more accessible for everyone, and transparent and communication feedbacks between students and the student union.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to question 1. If you had to pick one thing that would be the priority for you in this role in your first couple of months, what would it be? We'll start with Angus.
So one of the big problems going into the sort of development side of things with the finances and how to run a club. At the moment, there's been a history of negligence in terms of what I mean by that is essentially handover reports and financing. Committees tend to just sort of copy and paste last year's one and aren't really actually thinking about the finances they need and how they're going to use them. And so a big part of that will be I want to redevelop and sort of introduce a lot more training and a clear understanding of how the finance systems work at Bath, so that when these new committees come in, some of them who have never used finances before, they can actually look at this, work out what they need to do, how they need to spend the money, and what they need for the next year. There's a lot of other legislative stuff that needs to be done, so there's gender eligibility as well, but that's all going to be sort of a lot of research, a lot of early stuff, so it's ready for September.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Jacob.
I think what I want to focus on most is access, getting as many people into sport as possible. The more people we can get into sport, the more we can grow. Having a smooth guideline for development, training the people to improve their services, who are willing to commit, give their time. That's how we can grow, that's how we can improve.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Nick.
So transparent communication and feedback channels is my main priority for students specifically. I think they're the most important part, obviously in the uni, so I think their voice needs to be heard. So I think that is my top priority, yep.
Thank you. We'll move to Ishwar next.
The most important thing is to understand where the issue is, the groundwork of where the issue is and what can be done to rectify the issue. is something which I'll look into and then probably solve the issue.
Thank you. Abby?
Is that working? Yeah, there we go. I think for me, my main aim would be, I think breaking down that kind of inclusivity wall. I think for a lot of people, when they come to Bath, it is, they hear the word sports and they straight away think of those high performance athletes. And that kind of sets back that idea of, oh, I can't really join a sports team. I think that kind of just stems not even just in the sports team itself, but all the way back into the kind of gym classes that we have accessible and the gym times and everything. And it's going back into the earlier stages of creating those spin classes, yoga classes, mindfulness classes, small things that allow those, maybe so people who are not so confident in sports, to get a grasp of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Josh.
I think for me, it's opportunity. Opportunity is such a big thing at university, so the opportunity to try new sports, the opportunity to get your hands on kit, the opportunity to see new sports. There's 53 different sports clubs, as far as I'm aware, that all have different things they want to showcase. So it's giving the people the opportunity to actually experience that, get their hands on new sports, and actually give them the access to try things, whether that's put on equipment, whether that's where they need to put the equipment, just giving people the opportunity and actually working with current committees to do that, because they'll have all had experiences this year of issues that they want to transfer to get fixed next year. So it'll be them in them handovers, get them sorted, and within the first few months of sport officer being able to actually engage with them communities and sort them problems out.
Yep. And finally, actually, Zuba.
My main priority would be, and this point is something that I've got this morning while having some words with students in offline campaigning, is people want more recreational sports and taster sessions. Students were literally asking, if you become a sports officer, will you have more recreational sessions on women or post-grad only sessions? So I feel that this will be the first priority for me going ahead and figuring out if that can be done, and that can only be done if we have club chairs and sports reps meeting all together and plan that activity all along the year round for students and then deliver it.
Thank you. We'll now move on to question 2. It's a long one. Scheduled teaching or other commitments, such as working part-time on Wednesday afternoon, often prevent some of our students from being able to engage in sports. How would you ensure that all students have the opportunity to engage in sporting activity if they wish to? We'll go to Nick first.
So I believe, that is a good question. I think having more than one sport dedicated day, I know Wednesday is a big one with matches and stuff, so I think creating more opportunities for students to be able to take part in different sports. So just creating those different times and different times in different areas where you can get involved, and not just having it highlighted on that Wednesday with the big game days.
Thank you. Next is Abby.
The way that I would focus about it is similar to what netball has done with one of the teams that I'm actually coaching. There is this whole entire hyperfixation around the Bucks Wednesday. But for a lot of teams who may not have the funds or may not have the ability to play in Bucks, they then don't get that possibility to. So what netball's done this year is with two of our teams, our 5s and 6s, we've put ourselves into a lower ranked team which is the kind of the Moonraker League. So what I would love to do is to talk and to kind of have a discussion with other sporting teams and recommend that not all of your teams have to focus on Bucks. They can go into the league below, which just has just the same amount of competitive level against other university teams.
Thank you. Next candidate is Zuba.
I think this is where student feedback comes into place. It's not necessarily that all students want something on Wednesday night on offer for sports. We can have something on different days as well. Maybe have group sessions, different societies to have some sports sessions and then deliver it. As I mentioned in my previous point as well, more recreational sports on offer. So then students actually come along and sense that sports community here at Bath will be the way to go.
Thank you. Next candidate is Josh.
I think for myself, there is actually the opportunities there. People just don't know about them. For example, like this year as football chair, I initiated Recreation Women's League because we had over 300 people turn out to women's trials, and there's only space for 40 people max in the book squad. So it's all about just creating opportunities, giving them access, and letting them know when it is and where it is. Because actually, when the opportunities are there, like this turn up and plays and things like that, each committee can do that for their sport. So like football, it's been a big thing this year. Get people the opportunity to play, get people the access, and that would what I'd do is literally give the people the platform, tell them where it is, when it is, and get people that experience in them.
Thank you. Next candidate is Ishwar.
So I would like to add on to what Zubair said. It should not be only on Wednesday nights. We can have it on Thursday nights and Friday nights. But something which I want to add in to the entire thing is to have interdepartmental tournaments where we can probably who didn't know where sport is, what sport is, or when the selections were going to be held and stuff. They would get the opportunity to showcase their talent, and we can probably use that talent to they can probably represent the University of Bath. So we might miss a lot of talent because some people might not know when the selections were going to be held. So interdepartmental tournaments are my go-to.
Thank you. Next is Angus.
Right, so I think there are many, many opportunities across sports that aren't based on winners. Obviously, the majority is. Again, it's fundamentally down to the fact that there's no localized source of information. If you want to play a sport and you haven't necessarily decided which sport it is, you have to message every single club, you have to message every single committee when your training times, when it's, and then sort of work it out. So what we need is essentially a centralized document that has all the training sessions, all the open sessions, everything you can do, so that a student can look at it and go, okay, I'm not free on Wednesdays, but I'm free on Thursdays. What's going on then? And actually have a very clear and easy to understand guide of what's available to them. So a big part of that will be sort of liaising with the community and saying, hey, look, we want to spread this out, move stuff away from Wednesdays, or we don't need to say move stuff away from Wednesdays because ultimately, like the majority of people can do it. We need to make sure there are alternatives as well as that. It's not about saying no, we're not doing sports on Wednesdays. You have to change. It's about going, okay, well, where can we create other opportunities to do so?
Thank you. And finally, for question 2, Jacob.
I think the key part of this question is there's so much more to sport at Bath than just bucks. It's so vast, and we need to do more to publicise that. I'd love to create more standardised intramural leagues, sports between societies and other non-sports clubs can really allow many more people to get involved in a way that's much more social, and I think also much more indicative of a thriving sports culture. I want more sports sessions as a whole to represent every student at Bath, not just ones who are competing in the highest level in bucks. That being said, there's also much more chance to compete over the weekends. In volleyball, we regularly compete across the southwest, and I think that we can push that more as well.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3. All of you have mentioned upgrading facilities or equipment. How do you propose paying for this, given that the SU does not have the money to fund such endeavours, and the sports department have to balance their student and commercial activity? First, we'll go to Zuba.
I was low-key expecting that question, to be honest. My manifesto says facilities, budget, and transparency. So I want to focus it on transparency more. And I feel when there's a communication to students and the clubs, it should be very transparent in the fact that if there is something, why is it in this way? And if not, why not? So if we can have something and push university to give us some facilities or budget and what we want to represent the sports community here at Bath, we will push for it. But if not, that communication should be very transparent out to students. And that is what is mentioned in my manifesto as well.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Josh.
I think for myself, it's working with the community. Bath University is such a big part of the community. So if they're thinking of things that we can improve as a university that they'll be able to use as well, I think we'll be able to get sponsorships, links and stuff like that, and that will be a way to bring money into the university. The university does have money to what we can spend, but there is limits to it. So that is working with each individual club on where they can allocate their budget and the budget from previous years, because each year that budget resets, so it's different and different amounts. So it'll be about working with them committees to be able to see what they need and like where they are, and if we have a centralised budget to be able to make all-round changes for everyone.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Jacob.
I think a great way to fund the endeavours that we'd all like to implement would be simply to develop the members of the club further. We can save a lot of money in the budgets by training the members of the clubs to be able to give more of their own time. I know I've been heavily involved with transport in both fencing and volleyball, and I know how much of a bottomless pit that can be. And if we can train students to become MIDAS qualified, to be able to drive themselves to games, rather than having to pay for 9 separate train tickets, we can save huge amounts. We can also train our committee members to be able to establish partnerships with outside brands. Each club has a very individual set of needs for different equipment, and I think this should be represented by them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Ishwar.
The point that I'd mentioned in my manifesto is to manage finances very transparently, and one of the reasons why that could be done is to ensure that each clubs or societies would know that what's available and what's not available. If something is not available, we can go seek sponsorships, which can help it can help the entire society to perform well and get whatever quality equipment that they need. And
Thank you. Next candidate will be Angus.
Right, so I mean, following on from what I said earlier, fundamentally, I do believe there is enough money to go around. It's not a problem of do we have enough money, it's a problem of how we use that money. So when clubs are requesting their money for the next year, quite often more than not, as I said, the handover documents are just a copy and paste of the year before. And what that means is their situation's changed, but their funding request hasn't. So you end up with this sort of stalemate of committees having money and not knowing what to do with it or not having enough for it. So when we train committees to use this handover documents, so not only look at what do we need next year, what about the year after? If we're buying some kit that expires in 5 years, we don't need to fund that for 5 years, but in 5 years' time we need to. This isn't a problem we can solve today. This is a problem that we need to get the ball rolling, start that education process, start that trend of actually planning ahead as a committee, which means that maybe in 2-3 years, we're at a point where every club is financially stable, if not self-sustaining. So I've talked a lot about kit storage and the rest of that. I'm not promising just to replace everything like that. What I'm saying is I will give you the support and guidance you need to create a plan to get your club into the best position it can be in.
Thank you. Nick?
I believe this again goes back to transparent communication and feedback. So I think speaking with the different club heads and brainstorming ideas on how to best allocate money and like what their thoughts are on it, and then also fundraisers I think is a good idea for different facility like storage units.
Thank you. And finally for question 3, Abby.
I think there's a few things that we could do to kind of, as you said, that budget was quite limited, but I think there's a few things that we could do just based off this year to really help with their budget. I think addressing one of probably Bath Sporting's biggest sponsors, which is Bath Building. I know for a fact that they sponsor rugby, they sponsor netball, so maybe talking to them and addressing them about what other sports they would be interested in helping finance. Even if it's the smallest thing, it can help different societies and different clubs. Alongside of that, looking into what each kind of club had spent said money on that year and addressing with them, having that conversation of, was that price necessary? Do you actually need this much? Having that harsh talk, I think, is going to be necessary. You're never going to see an improvement in things if people continuously spend money on things that aren't a proper necessity for the moment. And as Angus said, this isn't a now issue. It is going to be a thing that has to progress over years. I can't promise you that we're going to have brand new spanking lockers today. It will take time.
Thank you. On to question 4. There are many mentions of growing clubs. However, many clubs are struggling to accommodate their current members. How would you go about fixing this? The first candidate will be Ishwar. Yes. There are many mentions of growing clubs. However, many clubs are struggling to accommodate their current members. How would you go about fixing this?
sometimes it's very difficult to accommodate everybody because of the lack of facilities or the lack of funds that we have. More than that, we also need to understand that we need to take sport to every single individual possible in the university. One of the reasons we can do is to understand we can have a lot of more rec sessions for people who are not available or who cannot be a part of a particular society, or they can probably come on during the weekends and enjoy sport. And the sport needs to be enjoyed. Yes, performance is one, but people who cannot perform at the elite level or at a professional level needs to enjoy sport to the maximum. So we can make sure that we can form different kinds of communities who can go enjoy during the weekends or on during the weekdays whenever they are free.
Thank you. The next candidate's answer will be Jacob.
I think this all comes down to training. Teaching the people involved with the club, who are running the club, how to cater to the amount of people that they have. There are certain types of sessions that you're able to do when you have a lot of people. There are certain types that you can't do. And so providing guidance and support, as well as teaching them how to expand what they're able to do, using other facilities, maybe going down into town using the various parks and greens we have, as well as just providing a more general support of the current use of the times and facilities that we do have already.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Nick.
I believe, sorry, this is this is important to look at the freshers for this. As a lot of freshers, they'll come to uni, join a club, and then unfortunately drop out early or stop due to things like time commitments or lectures start picking up. So I think looking at creating those other times to get sport out. So again, like earlier, not focusing on that Wednesday, but having more available times for students to take on this.
Thank you. Zuba.
Yeah, I think there's a point in my manifesto which says that give it a go sessions or bring your buddy sessions. So even if a student is not a part of a club, we can have those sessions for students to just come along and play. And I'm again mentioning that point of building the community with sports along with it. So not necessarily students need to be part of a club. It's about making sure that they have that sport experience. There's SU Bath active sessions, which students are not aware of right now as well. So we gotta push all those things out to students to make them aware that there are things done and there can be things planned ahead in the year as well. And if I'm given the opportunity, I would love to do that.
Thank you. Abby.
Any chance, could you repeat the question again? Sorry,
Yeah.
it was a while ago.
There are many mentions of growing clubs. However, many clubs are currently struggling to accommodate their current numbers. How would you go about fixing this?
Thank you very much. I think for me personally, when I think about the sports that I've played over my past 3 years, I really struggle with the calendars and figuring out what I'm able to go to and when I'm able to go to it. And I think for freshers, being given that calendar right at the start of the year of saying, here's when your regular clubs train, but here is also slightly different gym classes that are also available, which might then tailor to the sport that you're wanting to do. And that kind of gives you a taster and a slight session of it before committing to that full sport. And at the start of every single year, from being social second netball for last year, I remember a lot of freshers came in and they go, I want to try this sport, I want to do this sport, I want to do this sport and be a part of it. But just maybe going right down to the small little aspect of it and trying that spin class maybe before you jump straight into cycling, or going to one of the free swim sessions before you go straight into joining swim club. Just creating a bigger, wider calendar of selection of things. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Josh.
I think for myself, it's structure. Every club's got a committee. Sorry. Every club's got a committee, and that committee isn't often used that well. As like previous years, chairs or like individuals on a committee often do a lot. Sometimes they are the person that runs the club. So think about having the structure and getting people to actually work together as a team to actually be able to help the club out and help the day-to-day running and things like that. Because a lot of the time there isn't that help, and I think if people are trained better and taught what the structure needs to be and how we can improve, then we grow as a club together, and then that's when people's development gets as their club develops.
Thank you. And finally, for question 4, Angus.
Right, so I think the main problem here is identifying the root of the problem. Is it that funding? Is it lack of coaches, lack of time, or just committee management? And so by identifying what the limiting factor is will help you grow your club. So for example, American football, if we want to kit up a new player, costing us 400 quid per person. By the time you get the shoulder pads, the helmet, everything, it's a lot of money per person. So we just launched a flag football, which is a sort of non-contact alternative, and that costs us £5 per person. So what that's essentially said is for what we could have done one person in American football, we can kit up. I'll do quick math now. I think it's 100. It's a lot of people, a lot more people. So if it's maybe committee, maybe it's coaches, maybe you only have a few coaches, they can't give up their entire week to this. Okay, so how can we look at getting more coaches in? Can we train some players? A lot of students have level 1s. It doesn't cost much. The uni I sometimes pay for them. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore, but they did used to. So again, it's about identifying that root problem, finding out how can we solve this, and that should give them the chance to grow once you've identified that issue.
Thank you. Moving on to question 5. Many of the issues you raise in your manifestos have been raised year on year, and previous officers have faced challenges to resolve. What new ideas do you have to drive these issues forward and improve student support? We'll go to Jacob first.
I think the biggest thing is communication. We've all talked about on this table how many of the students at Bath just simply don't know about what's on offer. There were 53 sports. I didn't know about half of them, I won't lie. There's so many opportunities like Bath Active, like the Bring a Buddy system, like the all of the different opportunities we have. Being able to book all of the facilities, being able to use what we have, and I think that is what needs to improve first, so that everyone at Bath knows what they're capable of doing, what they're capable of contributing, and that's how we're going to solve all of the problems we have.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Josh.
I think for myself, it would be actually that communication again. People help people. Like, it's networking and talking and getting the things written and planning together helps actually things get done. When things are just like passed from person to person, things don't get done. So it's kind of just taking the action, planning as a group, and actually making sure things do get done. Obviously, we all have quite similar manifestos, but the actual main thing is we need to listen to the committees, and the committees comes with communication, because a lot of the time the SU don't actually understand the problem. So that's the point of bridging the gap and letting people listen and help with the communication.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Abby.
I think for me, if I was to describe the past couple of years with the sports officers, it wasn't finding the root of the issue. I think that's something that we keep missing every single year, as we say, we've got all these issues, this is wrong, that is wrong, but we never actually kind of identified the main point. And that can be finance, booking, storage, issues within the community and the committee itself. I think there has to be a proper sit-down conversation before the year properly gets to go ahead, and the committee, all the supporting committees are there, and actually have a one-on-one conversation with them, even if it is by committee for each chair, and saying to them, I want to look at your finance, your bookings, your storage, your overall committee, and breaking down each section. Because once you start doing that, you're going to find the small little gaps with their issues. That's when the finance is then going to increase, and that allowance will increase, because we then know what's going wrong. Find the root of the issue, you start fixing things.
Thank you. We'll next go to Angus.
Sorry, could I have the question again, please? It was a long one.
Many of the issues you raise in your manifestos have been raised year on year, and previous officers have faced challenges to resolve. What new ideas do you have to drive these issues forward and improve student support?
Okay, so I think a big problem I see, both I've seen this from the point of view of being a committee member, but also on the sports exec of interacting with committees, is that a lot of the time committees, basically the way it's done is committees are given their funding, given their things, and sort of said, right, go and do what you need to do, which, you know, is the way it should be. Ultimately, clubs should be read by committee, but over the past few years, there's been very little direct support. And quite often not. When you need something done, you have to email the SU, and then they'll tell you to email someone else, and it's very hard to find out who you need to speak to, what you need to do to solve these issues. So again, whether it's training, whether it's having one-on-one meetings. So part of what I've said in my manifesto and what I plan to do is, if I do get elected, will be to sit down one-on-one with every committee at least 2 times, 3 times a year, if not more, and just sit down beginning, middle, end, and say, okay, where are we at? What's the plan going forward? How are we going to solve this? I think just direct communication, literally just discussing these details in person is the best way to do it.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Zuba.
So the way I want to answer this question is, previous officers, when they started their term, they were new into the role. And if I'm new sports officer, I already have an experience as an officer this year, and I can take that experience into the coming year to actually get things started as soon as possible. So it will be an advantage for me because I know how things work and what can be delivered and what not. The things, I know SU is planning a lot of things in the sports area. It's in the planning state right now. I can get that things into the execution stage and making sure that's been delivered out to the students. And this will be the change that will be from the previous years and to the coming year.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Nick.
So I also believe communication is a big factor in this. I think establishing opportunities for students to voice their opinions, concerns and suggestions. So I think creating an open door policy that allows students to directly influence the decisions that affect them is key in solving different problems.
Thank you. And finally, for this round, Ishwa.
So the first thing is to understand the root of the problem, and if I am elected as the sport officer, I would sit with the previous sport officer and understand what the issues were and what the issues are currently. Understand to the root of the problem and directly start communicating with the sport execs and the sport exec and the society heads in the chairs. That will help me understand what they are facing and what the exact issue is, and then we would be able to solve them with better, clearer resolutions.
Thank you. Moving on to question 6, the final question. Hypothetical scenario. What would your approach be if you were told that you had to cut the number of sports by a third? We'll go to Nick first.
So I think having meetings with different sports, having them suggest why they believe their sport should be not cut, and then possibly having a big meetings with different sports and potential debates for why they believe their sport shouldn't be cut, and then based off that, cut them.
Thank you. We'll go to Abby next.
Ideally, I would not want to be in that position, but I think it's never an easy kind of conversation to have with any kind of person cutting something that they love and that they're passionate about, especially if you are on the committee. But if it was a thing that I had to address, but I think there'd be a few things I would look at: finance, booking availability, numbers, and then I would also look at sporting results and athletics. And there's no kind of easy way to go about it, but when you've got the data in front of you, it will make that decision a little bit easier. But I would hope to never be in that situation, hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, just kind of going back to those 4 things of just addressing the facts, looking at the success rate of each sport, and then going from there.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Zuba.
I think the first thing will be asking question why. Why is it happening? And then to go about it. I'm thinking it's just only being told to me and not implemented directly. So there will be a lot of student consultation, which sports are getting out, why is it happening, more summit conversations, more students getting involved in those conversations. And the key thing to address will be why will that happen. It's always hard to have that conversations, but then making sure that if we are delivering to what students want and there's students' voices around it for a particular situation which needs to be addressed is the way to go to. All that being said, I would still want this situation to be hypothetical always.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Josh.
I think no person wants to be in that position. So as a sport officer, I would try and avoid that at all costs. So you would have to have them conversations with each club of who's got the more members, what their sport actually does for the university. As a university, we are all about growing and keep developing and stuff like that. So it'd be a case of finding a way to keep the sports going, keep bringing people in. If we have to bring people in board, get the community involved and stuff like that, because the university is such a big part of the community. So yeah, getting their support and things like that would help hopefully save the other two-thirds. The other two-thirds. So we wouldn't have to go down to a third. I think it is all about keeping what we do well and continuing the good work rather than just completely cutting it and thinking, that we've got to go and get rid of them.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Ishwar.
Firstly, I should never be in the situation to, cut 1/3 of the sports. And if I'm in a situation that to have to cut 1/3 of the sports, then I'm not fit to be a sport officer. And having said that, we need to find out why is there a problem to cut 1/3 of the sport? Is it finance? Is it lack of coaches? Is it not enough participation and so on and so forth? I think because one of the main reasons why sport shouldn't be cut here because of the fact that it's one of the most prestigious educational institutions for sport-related courses. Only other university that I can think of which is even close to the University of Bath is Loughborough, but I would never want to be in that situation.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Angus.
Well, I mean, if I was told that, I would not just go about doing that immediately. I would be working to find out why that is. I mean, I would take this to Summit, take this to Senate, and also actually do a referendum, because ultimately the students, I'm sure if that was the decision, the student voice would not be happy about that, and ultimately the SU is responsible to to listen to that and look after it. So I would do everything in my power to fight against that. Hypothetically, if it was if it was completely unavoidable, it had to be done, then at that point you have to sort of say, okay, how can we merge clubs? Are there clubs that are similar enough that you could put them under one banner? Maybe they could combine their funding together, equipment similar enough. If there are clubs that aren't really engaging, that aren't really giving you anything back, then I guess you've got to basically find out what clubs are going to give something back based around what the issue is. Again, if it's finances, which clubs are the most financially stable and the rest of that. As I said, if that was ever an issue, I'm not backing out with the fight. I don't think I would ever be in a situation where I'd be approving that. I would not stop fighting for it. At the end of the day, every sports team matters, no matter if it's recreational, performance, or anything else.
Thank you. And finally, Jacob.
Diving straight into the hypothetical, I would think it would depend what you mean by cutting. Is it simply cutting financial support, or these clubs becoming completely unaffiliated from the SU? There are certain clubs which are capable of running sustainably with their own agency. Giving these ones freedom would be a possible solution. Clubs which have a lot lower barriers to entry than other ones which might not need specific facilities, ones which might not need specific expertise, risk assessments, and all these kinds of things that might provide students barriers. I think I stand by the commitment that everyone at Bath should be able to do a sport that they love, to experience something new, something different, something separate. And so the role of the exemplify that completely.
Thank you. We'll now move on to closing statements. Each of you will have 30 seconds to make a final pitch. We'll start with Zuba.
I think sports at Bath should be more bigger and better. You all can think me as a friend who's like obsessed with sports, but also comes with an expertise of an officer of 1 year, and I know how to deliver on the expectations and promises that being made. One of my manifesto point from last year is in the SU Top 10, so how I know how to take that things ahead and actually make things work, and I'm promising that I'm going to deliver that to you if I become sports officer.
Thank you. Moving on to Nick.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and let's make student sport nation leading at Bath.
Thank you. Moving on to Josh.
I think for myself, it's all about sport being your way. The student union is all about the students, so it's talking to the students, doing what the students want. And as the sport officer, I will work closely with the student body, each committee, to be able to implement as much as we can for what they want and help have sport their way.
Thank you. Next up is Jacob.
Sport at Bath should be for the students. I want to support high-level elite athletes. I want to support athletes just want for a jog in the park. I believe that we can push this further to have the best sporting culture in all of the UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Ishwa.
It's working. Check. Hello. Yeah. So one of the reasons why I want to become a sport officer is because I really have the experience of taking sport to the next level. I have professional experience in cricket, played with international cricketers like Ashwin, and worked behind the scenes with him. Know what it takes for professional sport, and it's not only about professional sport. It's also about recreational, building a community for all the people who want to play sport.
Thank you. Next is Angus.
So this past year, I've basically spent working directly with the SU officer and with the SU staff. And so I have a very clear understanding of what I need to do, how things work, and how I'm going to put my plans into action. Whether it's student engagement, trying to get more people involved in sports, or whether it's the fundamental issues that clubs are seeing, whether it's finances, confusion around gender eligibility and other topics, everything I have written down, I know how to implement it, and I will do so from the get-go.
Thank you. And finally, Abby.
I think to close it off, I think I want to quickly address what I do want to fully focus on. So starting with kind of improving that well-being and mental kind of state. That's through sports, or that's just through general mindset. Inclusivity for every single ability, that's gender, if that's you're a low performance athlete, high performance athlete, just really getting that push for everyone. But I think the main thing for me is finding that root of the problem within every single sporting community. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for attending Sports Questions to Candidates.